some of the hardest times brought me to what turned out to be like my purpose. I had no direction, I had no skills, I had no money, and I just did it. And then one thing led to another. Facebook was so much cooler back then. What do you do that makes you different? The timing is just so important. That link is like a signal to Google. None of those brands are Copyblogger. I had always been investing into companies. Like, it didn't even have a product. I had to create a product. That creates stress in your life. No matter what, until the end of time, businesses are going to need leads. My real growth comes from the growth of the company.
Opportunities that fall in your lap because of this network.
These people do not give a shit. I've never thought of my digital community as a replacement for actual community. To stay out of the way and let smart people be smart.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Want to attract and convert more leads? Want to learn how digital PR, branding, and SEO can establish and build your brand identity? Welcome to the Market Movers Building Brands and Links with Linkify podcast. We answer these questions and help you ramp up your brand visibility and credibility. Let's cut through the noise and make your business the talk of the town. We're your hosts, Nick and Chris. Let's get this show on the road.
Welcome to the Market Movers podcast. Today, I am joined by Tim Stoddart, a remarkable entrepreneur and digital marketing leader who transformed a personal journey of recovery into a series of thriving online businesses. Welcome to the show, Tim.
Thanks, Chris. Pleasure to be here. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, so why don't you start, please, just by introducing yourself to the viewers and walk us through your entrepreneurial journey.
Happy to. Well, as you said, my name's Tim Stoddart. I got started as a writer. Really, if there's a place where my journey as an entrepreneur started, it's as a writer. About 15 years ago, I was in a position in my life where I was sort of looking for direction and a little bit of trouble. And I didn't really know what to do. I got kicked out of some places, which we can get into as to the extent that you want to. But the long and short of it is that, one day I sat down in front of a computer and I just started blogging. There was an old program called Blogspot, which I think still exists. I think it's called Blogger now, maybe. I don't really know. It was like an old Google product. And I just started writing about anything that came to mind. And eventually through that exercise, people were commenting on the blog posts that I write. And I was so confused by it because I had not told anybody about it. It was just a thing that I was doing for myself. And it was through that I discovered like inbound search, and I discovered SEO, and I discovered that people find content and find community on the internet. And that was it. That was the light bulb moment for me. So, from there, I found a website that was called Copyblogger, which was basically teaching people how to not just write online, but write in a certain way that appealed to how people read on the internet. Because it's not like reading a book, it's a little bit different. And man, I just got hooked on it. Like, I was so lucky. Really one of those strange things in life where some of the hardest times in my life brought me to what turned out to be like my purpose, and like my life's direction. From that moment, I was hooked, and I just been doing it ever since. I love building online brands. I love writing still. I write every day to like my personal audience on my newsletter, and it's worked out pretty well.
That's awesome. Like a real natural way to have landed in this crazy world of like online marketing. You said you were kicked out of a few places. So it sounds, would you expand on that? And then just tell me, like, did you literally just sign up to the Blogspot platform with no consideration for anything other than spilling your own thoughts and feelings through the written word? Was that your only goal?
Absolutely. So I'm happy to expand on it. For anybody that's listening to this that knows my story, people know that I'm in recovery. And about 15 years ago, it'll be 15 years in March, I got sober. I was born and raised in Philadelphia. Go Birds, fuck the Cowboys. And I was having a real hard time. I mean, I don't need to get into the gory details, but it was difficult. I had a cousin who is from Scotland, actually. Most of my family is from Scotland over in the UK. And, he had some of his own alcohol issues for reasons that are like in my genetics, right? And he had gotten sober himself. And I crashed on his couch I was basically like, I had some legal things that were following me around. So I sort of like booked it out of Philly, and that was the journey for me. So about 6 months into that, for anyone listening to this that's experienced it, like about 6 months in, you gain some weight and you're just sleeping a little bit better and you don't feel like you're going to die every day. And I found somebody down there that was like a mentor, and he bought me this issue of Success Magazine. And back then, those issues used to come with CDs in them, which is hysterical now. But it was an interview with this guy named Seth Godin, who I had never heard of before. And he had written this book called Purple Cow. And so I guess he was like doing press for it. I can't even really remember that much of it. I was listening to it from this laptop that I bought at a pawn shop. And it just spoke to me in this way that like I really can't quite explain. And towards the very end of it, he gave this piece of advice where he's just said, start a blog, don't tell anybody about it, and write in it every day. And I really didn't have much insight outside of that. There was just something about this guy, Seth Godin, that seemed like it would work for me. Like I had no direction, I had no skills, I had no money, and I just did it. Like I don't even know why. I just did it. And then one thing led to another, I would write about anything, really. I would write about how crazy I felt because I'd never really been out of Philly. And all of a sudden I'm in South Florida, right? And there's the sun shining, there's lizards everywhere, and there's like this blue ocean. It was very uncomfortable. It was very hot. I would write about that. I would write about just going for walks with my dog. I remember I wrote a blog post about making like the perfect peanut butter and jelly sandwich. It was super random. But yeah, eventually when I would write about my journey in recovery, people would find me probably because they were feeling a lot of the same things that I was feeling, and they would leave comments on the blog. And that was like the manifestation of my first website, which is called Sober Nation. It's like a community of people that are either in recovery or that are struggling with their own shit and are looking for help and resources. And this is what I'm doing with my life. And I just never second guessed it, and I never stopped.
Congratulations on your ongoing recovery. That's amazing. So for the people listening now, obviously we're all familiar with optimizing as much as we can with written word on WordPress in order to like get traffic to our website and our business and monetize the hell out of it. So that's like the goal. But you were just writing like about walking your dog. You maybe were the early manifestation of like one of the first travel bloggers writing about these new place in Florida or whatnot. But you said that, was it like a light bulb moment with these comments, or did you have any insight into the analytics of like you're actually getting traffic here, and then where's there like a moment where you wanted to transition this thing that you were enjoying into a business, and what did that look like?
There was a moment. Well, I'll start with your first question. Well, I should say your chronological first question. There was no insight. There was no analytics. I didn't even really know what any of that was. It was just people commenting. And Facebook was pretty new at that time. And so naturally, I created a Facebook account. And this, for people that are a little bit younger than me, I'm 38. It's hard to really put it into context because Facebook was so much cooler back then than it is now. And it was real like community. It wasn't like this toxic, everyone like super thirsty for clicks and just bullshit like that, right? And so I created a Facebook page. I don't even know why. I just thought of it. And really quickly, I built an audience of like 10 or 20,000. And I would post my blog posts into the Facebook page and they would just skyrocket. The reason is because back then, Facebook pages, like the algorithm was a lot different, where if you had a Facebook page, like 40 to 50% of the people that followed your page, if you put something in your page, it would display on their timeline, And so like you could post something and almost everybody that followed you would see it. Now it's like drastically less than 1%. So that whole model was kind of crushed. But nonetheless, I was creating a community before like I even really knew what an online community was. And so two things happened. The first thing that happened is three things actually. I discovered Copyblogger and I just learned how to craft content in a way that is more optimized. But when I say optimized, I don't just mean SEO. I mean optimized for like the reader experience. That really helped. I'm a good writer, but that like really turned me into a pro. The second thing that happened is treatment centers and behavioral healthcare facilities. Like 15 years ago, especially in the States, I don't know if this is true in other places in the world, but this is when like the addiction crisis really, really started getting super jacked up. And I'm kind of like a symbol of that, I suppose. And I was getting approached basically by treatment centers saying like, how did you do this? How did you build this community? Like, can we work together? Are there people inside your community that need help? If so, can you refer them to us? And I'm kind of like, I don't know, like, who are you? Whoa, what's going on? But it caught my attention, right? Like, of course it caught my attention. And then the third thing that happened is as I was really diving into this internet marketing world, so there was the website Copyblogger, and Copyblogger wasn't as much about SEO as it was just about formatting content and like storytelling and stuff like that. But there was this other website called SEO Moz, which is called Moz now. And they had this forum, and there was this guy named Mike something. I can never remember his name. He owns this company called Nifty Marketing. And SEO Moz used to have like an open forum where people could write their own stuff and post it on the forum. And he wrote this like 30-page article all about how he decided to specialize in being about personal injury law. And if you go to Nifty Marketing, the guy's still crushing it. His agency is like 30 years old or some shit like that. It's just all for lawyers. And he had a line in there that was like, the guy Mike who wrote the article, he was having a conversation with his mentor, and he told his mentor what he was going to do is just going to start a normal agency. And his mentor said, there's tens of thousands of agencies in the world. Like, what do you do that makes you different? And that was why he decided to specialize in personal law. And I read that, and it was just like the whole thing just totally came together. It was like, wow, I'm creating this community. I'm getting an influx of leads from behavioral healthcare facilities. And back then, like, there was no such thing really as internet marketing for behavioral health care. It was still very much like referral based and through like harm reduction hotlines and even like the courts, right? I saw this new market and I saw that I can specialize in it. And I saw that I had like a real particular insight into that industry just through my own experience, right? Like I just had like this real group of skills that were that made me very uniquely qualified to like start this agency. And so yeah, I transitioned my blog into what is today Sober Nation. And from that, I started my first agency, which is called Stodzy Internet Marketing. Stodzy was my nickname when I was a kid because I was like a skater rat, you know, and that's how it started. So I had like my media entity, which was Sober Nation, and that was community, and that was lead generation, and then there was the agency, which would work directly with the clients to build their own like online brands. I had no fucking clue what I was doing, but I just sent it, you know, I just went with it, and like I said, it's really worked out.
That's awesome. The stars aligned, I think, didn't they, for you?
Well, the timing.
Yeah.
I mean, really, that's one of the things that I have like a semi-decent audience now, right? And so anytime people ask me questions about ideas, it's always the one thing that's hard to explain to people. Where like, it doesn't matter what you're doing, the timing is just so important, and you can't always really control that. And so in my case, like, yeah, I'm a real hard worker. I'm really good at what I do. I had a great idea. I executed it like not to perfection, but we made it happen, you know? However, the X factor was the timing of it. It all just worked out perfect.
That's awesome. So at some point during this journey, you made the decision to explore the possibility of purchasing Copyblogger, which you did. And you quote as a quote of you saying it was the one of the scariest, dumbest, most exhilarating, challenging, and smartest things that you'd ever done in your life. So that's a whole range of emotions you went through there. So I'd love you just to tell me a bit about this purchase of the Copyblogger story and where you're at now with it.
That's funny. I remember writing that article too. Okay, so the story is that through a series of events, well, really through my podcast, it's so cool that you're doing a podcast now. I'm relaunching my podcast, but I always tell people that
I saw
the
on
value
X.
I got from my podcast. Yeah, it's like
you posted, yeah.
It's not about the money or the revenue or nothing. It's just about what we're doing right here, having like unbroken conversations. So through my podcast, I was able to meet all of like my idols. You know, I met this guy named Johnny Nastor. I met this guy named Brian Gardner. He was one of the partners of Copyblogger. And I met Brian Clark, who was the founder of Copyblogger, and really was like a hero to me. I remember I was so nervous. I also, like, Seth Godin was on my show. A guy named Ramit Sethi wrote a book and has a website called I Will Teach You to Be Rich. He was hugely influential to me. All of that came through my podcast. And so, yeah, I mean, it was like, it didn't happen all at once. It was a lot of networking and a lot of deal making. But at the end of the day, I bought the website. That's awesome. Here's why it was a smart thing to do. Copyblogger existed before social media. And so before social media, like the social media was backlinks. So when I say backlinks and like RSS feeds, we hardly use RSS feeds anymore. But the main thing you need to understand is that if I have a website and someone else has a website and that someone else puts a link on their website, then when you click on the link, it goes to my website. That link is like a signal to Google that says like, oh, okay, this person is linking back to this website. So this website must be like worth linking to. It's basically how you source your information on the internet, how Google stops you from just like saying stuff that isn't true. It's like the works cited, like the bibliography of the internet, you know? And since Copyblogger existed before social media, it had so many backlinks because every time they would publish a new article, all the other bloggers would link to it to share it with their friends and to send it out to their own email lists, right? So the SEO value of the website is really, really significant. It's hard to find websites these days that have as many backlinks as Copyblogger did. So that was smart. It was incredibly stupid because the website itself had no revenue. Copyblogger.com was just the blog, but none of the products that the company of Copyblogger sold were on that website. They hosted all of their courses on another website, and then they owned a company called StudioPress, which was like a WordPress themed store, and that was on studiopress.com, right? So when I bought Copyblogger, I didn't buy like a business. I just bought an audience.
Did you
that
know
was
this?
Crazy.
Did you know this?
Yeah.
Yeah. You weren't blindsided.
It was also exhilarating because for people like me, Copyblogger was a huge deal to a lot of people. Like I remember I went to the ConvertKit conference, Crafting Commerce, and I said to somebody that I bought a website called Copyblogger, and we were crossing the street and he stopped right in the middle of the street. And he looked at me, he's like, you fucking bought Copyblogger? And I'm like, yeah, have you heard of it? And he just kind of looked at me. So like it was a strange thing to like tell my mom about, right? Because what does she know about it? To her, it's just a website. But to me, it's like one of the original content marketing blogs ever. Probably is one of the first three to ever do it, but in my opinion, it was by far the most polished. Like they really leveled it up to what it meant to have like a brand in content marketing. That was crazy. It was a crazy thing to do. There was no reason for me to do it. I had plenty of money. Life was good. And I was about to have my son. My wife and I were like waking up, working out every day. You know, my business was like relatively automated and I just destroyed all of that. Basically, I just like made my life into a shit show for 3 years. But man, I am so happy that I did it.
Yeah. It's like your baby. And did you buy it outright? And where are you with it now?
Yeah, I bought it outright. It's still going. I have a business partner. His name is Charles Miller. He really is incredible. Honestly, I got so lucky that I had him in my life and in my ecosystem. You know, this is like another cool lesson just about the value of good people. He didn't buy into it. He didn't do anything other than kind of prove how talented he was. And now he owns a significant piece of the company. I just gave it to him, but it was very worth it. He's a pro. So yeah, it's thriving. I mean, Copyblogger will never be what it was just because now there's a gazillion different brands all trying to do this, but none of those brands are Copyblogger. And I'm really thrilled that I was able to kind of pass that torch and create something that remains like as elevated as Copyblogger was, 10, 15 years ago.
I think that's really nice, yeah. As well, because it meant so much to you as well. Like these things often, if they're not kept in arms and hands of people who love what they do, then we've seen this happen countless times. They can die and fade to nothing. So I think that's really nice that it's still going under your stewardship. And this is now housed, I guess, under the Tim Stoddart Enterprises umbrella of businesses. And that was your first big acquisition. Maybe it gave you the confidence to make future acquisitions?
Sort of. It was my first acquisition for sure. I had always been investing into companies. It's only been the last 2 years that I started being public about that and trying to make a thing of it, Mm-hmm. It was without a doubt the biggest check that I had written at that time. I mean, by a large factor, by 7. And it was the first time I ever really took on something like that, especially because you got to remember, I know I said it before, but it had no revenue. It didn't even have a product. I had to create a product. I had to create a service to attach to it. So it was that's why I can say all of those things. It was one of the best decisions I ever made. It was one of the dumbest things I ever did. It was exhilarating. It's scary. It was fun. I mean, it's been a wild ride, but it all worked out.
So what sort of businesses are you looking to buy now then? Is this something you talk publicly about investing? I'm wondering if you could talk to my audience about what makes sense in today's market as a good acquisition. What gets your juices flowing? What are you looking at?
Things that get my juices flowing are the things that nobody talks about. I shouldn't say everybody, that's a general statement, but I find it's common knowledge for everybody to chase the new hot thing. It's always been that way, right? And it's not that I don't see opportunities in trends. I do, but trends require a lot of hard work because they change quickly and everybody does them. By definition, that's why they're a trend. I really like things that people take for granted. Boring, excuse me, the opposite of busy. I got stuck there for a second. And that includes a lot of healthcare industries. That includes a lot of service businesses, like local businesses especially. I don't ever anticipate me buying a local service business, like a electrician shop or something like that, just because I don't want to deal with customers, really, to tell you the truth. Yeah. So here's my criteria, basically. Here's my investing ethos. It needs to cash flow. I'm not a venture investor. I only invest in something that has yield. I'm not interested in writing 1,000 checks and hoping that one of them pays off like 10,000x. It's not that that's not a good philosophy. I don't like to think about it that hard, and I don't like to stress out that much, because no matter how that creates stress in your life, no matter what kind of temperament you have, it just does. So it has to cash flow. It has to be evergreen. So it has to be in an industry that's going to be around forever. Some of those include like a lot of healthcare businesses I'm really into. I'm into boring. So lead generation is always a winner for me, because the way I think about it is no matter what, until the end of time, businesses are going to need leads. Always. It's never not going to be cool to be able to make people's phones ring. So I like that. And then the third one is the founder needs to be cool. And I really mean that, because I do not have time to deal with people that irritate me, basically. It's just not something in my life that I'm willing to like compromise on. It's not to say that I'm not willing to have like difficult conversations or stuff like that. It doesn't have to be that way. Everybody's just a person, and I get that. But just that feeling where you don't even know why, like this person sucks. Like I just don't want to deal with people that suck. Yeah. Ever, no matter what. So that's it. Like it needs to cash flow. It needs to be evergreen, and it needs to be with a founder or a partner or a person that doesn't suck. Those are my three criteria.
So you got to vibe with the founder. Are you looking to add post-acquisition growth strategy that comes from you? Is that like something that you want to be able to see that value add can be injected from you personally into that business?
Sometimes, like I've kind of stumbled across this strange model, which I don't even necessarily know what to call it. I can't be the first person that's ever come across this, but it's worked really well for me. You know what? Let me just run this by you and you tell me what it sounds like. When I say it to people, they say it's a venture studio, but I don't think that quite lines up. What happens is someone comes to my network and a lot of times they want to hire me. I don't work too closely with Stodzy anymore. It's still in my portfolio, but that me and my partner, we made that self-sustaining. Now I just sort of close deals for it because I'm pretty connected into the behavioral healthcare industry. But as other opportunities come my way and people want to hire me, if it excites me, if it meets those criteria, this is what I'll pitch. I'll say like, hey, I'll put 100 grand into your business. I'll invest it. However, that investment is for your digital marketing. And that money comes back to me as a consultant, as a vendor, basically, to do your digital marketing. So I'm kind of double dipping in a way, because like I'm getting paid from the company that I invested in. And like as a partner, that's not typically something that would happen. The difference is everybody's incentivized, because look, I'm not like a super genius or anything, but I'm good at this. I know how to grow companies online. And so the actual founder of the company feels good about the fact that they have a pro like me doing their digital marketing. They also feel good about the fact that the money for the digital marketing is already accounted for. And they feel good about the fact that like, I'm not just an agency that's kind of hanging on to a weekly paycheck. Like my real growth comes from the growth of the company, so in a way, I'm really just getting equity through sweat equity. But for tax purposes, really, and just for accounting purposes, it makes a whole lot more sense for me to literally take the money out of my account, put it into the other account, so that way I'm like I receive a K1, and then the money that comes back to me, I'm still a vendor. So it just keeps everything super, super clean and tight. If somebody were to say like, I'll just give you sweat equity, I honestly wouldn't do it, because there's no like, when you write checks, there's a real clear line in the sand as to like what your commitment, and not even your commitment, your what you brought to the table. Yeah. So like, I don't know what this business model is called. It's got to be called something, or someone should invent a word for it, but it's really worked for me, because it takes about 12 to 18 months for me to usually get my money back. But in that 12 to 18 months, I've worked my butt off and brought significant growth to the company. So then like my dividend checks are fat as well, so it's great, man. I don't know what to call it, but it's kind of what I'm doing now.
The sort of Stodds model, maybe something after you. Yeah, I love it. That's really cool. And obviously the companies that you invest in are going to be super pumped when they're getting results. If they were going to give equity anyway, you said you've got that tax incentive, that financial incentive to operate it that way, as opposed to just, I think it's really smart. And are you finding all of these opportunities via your network? So you're not proactively going out looking, it's just opportunities that fall in your lap because of this network that you have around you.
That's absolutely right. It's powerful.
Yeah.
For real. It's almost, I don't want to say cruel. It's like unfair in a way. Like, how rich people are the ones that get their dinners comped at fancy restaurants. You know what I mean? And like, they're the ones that can afford it. It's sort of that same thing when it comes to growing in your network, because like the more high value, high status people you meet, the easier it is to meet like higher value, higher status people. And so it's a grind. It was a grind, I should say. Now it's almost like, it's not that it's not a grind. You don't take everything that you can get, right? Where in the beginning, like every coffee meeting, every phone call, every little piece of advice, every free favor that somebody that you want to be in your network, like you just do it all, but that's the game. Like you push the boulder up the hill until the land flattens out a little bit. And then eventually it's easy to push the boulder. So, when I say my network, it's not only my digital network, because, my newsletter's only got like 15,000 subscribers, and that's a lot, but it's not a million, but still like it's enough. It's really, really enough. And then not to mention, it mostly comes from referrals, really. Like a personal brand is very, very powerful, but that is still a means to an end. And the means to an end is to have actual conversations with people that like excite you. And so that's really where the magic happens, at least for me.
Yeah, I could not agree more. And I think it's one of those things, especially where people that are just starting out, maybe they're listening to this, maybe it's hard to see the value in putting that time and effort in at the beginning and to see the ROI. And as well, I think some people, introverted people, it can feel a bit sort of icky as well, feeling like you're smooching these people in order to maybe try and get something out of it down the long run. But I'm not sure, I can't speak for every industry, but definitely this industry, most people, in fact almost all people, are just there to offer advice. If you're sort of straight with them, they'll be straight with you. And the ROI, it just like multiplies and magnifies the weeks and months that you go down. And it really is quite incredible. I mean, we've seen it as well with our agency, our growth, attending conferences, doing things like podcasts and meeting people. You could have a conversation with someone 24 months ago, and then you get an email in your inbox that they're saying, hey, you should speak to my friend. I've seen him twice in different conferences. It's incredible, isn't it? It really is.
No question. I have, after this podcast, I have a sales call with the lead that I met 2.5 years ago in Chicago, and has just kind of emailed me like once every 6 months, when you get those, you're like, like, is this ever going to be a thing? Right? Like, are you just constantly asking me for advice? But it always pays off. And, one thing I would add on there is, as digital people, I do think we overemphasize the digital network. Here's one thing that I've learned, and this is a unique insight for me just because I've had access to the healthcare industry. There are like ballers in healthcare. Like I look up to, my friends that like I think are really crushing it, like Nathan, who owns ConvertKit, and like Noah, who owns AppSumo, right? These are like $40-50 million a year companies. I think AppSumo is even a little bit bigger. I'm not totally sure. But for the people that are, like stalking other people's personal brands and thinking like, oh, wait, I can't wait to get on that level. We see that. And that's like the apex, right? The people I know that like that's chump change to them, these people do not give a shit about their LinkedIn following, or definitely not their Twitter. They don't care about going on podcasts or anything. They sit in circles with other people and shake hands and have conversations. And so that's like a thing that I've always really, really applied to my life. And look, the amount of value I've gotten from my digital following, my newsletter, and my LinkedIn profile especially is significant, right? It's more than I ever dreamed I could do, especially coming from where I come from. But look, the real killers in the world, they're not into this. They don't care about LinkedIn likes. they have conversations with people and they shake hands. And really, I really mean this. All of the super high ROI businesses in my portfolio, all of them came from, I mean, in some cases, me flying across the world. Like we talked about Thailand before we started recording. I flew all the way to fucking Thailand for like 3 days to have a meeting. I'm really glad I went. That's really where you crush it.
Yeah, that's so true as well. And actually, to circle back on sort of where we started with this, me personally, this is one of the things that I've enjoyed most about this business is the in-person connections and the people that you meet in person, like more than one time. But from like maybe like a personal mental health perspective, no, every time you sort of feel as if you've personally leveled up, you can go to a new event and like sort of go into the next tier of like sharks, as it were, and you realize that you're always like a rung below where you want to be. And like you said, the real powerhouse deals and all this, they don't even care about, you know, oh my God, this guy's got 200,000 like LinkedIn followers. He must be the absolute shit. But like, okay, they're next level. So I think it's an important thing to stay grounded and look after your mental health as well. So I'm just wondering if you could speak to that, especially considering where you've come from and your recovery within this sort of competitive world that we're living in.
Mental health is just another word for connection. If you're connected to people, you live in harmony. I have a lot of experience on both sides of this. I think addiction is just another word for isolation, really. Well, that's not totally literal, but if you're living in addiction, you're living in isolation. If you're living in community, you're living in like abundance. I've never thought of my digital community as a replacement for actual community. For me specifically, that exists in martial arts. I train Muay Thai pretty intensely and pretty regularly. Like, I don't bring the cell phone in with me. I don't take videos of myself punching and kicking the bag and like doing cool combos and shit like that. I go, it sounds weird for people these days because like we don't touch each other, you know, but I go to be with my dudes, my boys, and get super sweaty and have them punch me and hit me and like hug me and, you know, in clinch, like grip me up basically and toss me around. And I do the same to them. And it is just the most free, not a care in the world place that you can be in, like a dirty, well, I shouldn't say dirty, and a smelly, it smells dirty, right? But it's very sterile, right? But it smells, everyone's sweating, everyone's hand wraps and gloves and shin pads all stink. That's like actual community. My wife is a breathwork instructor, and so she's gotten me even deeper into this idea of like the healing within ourselves, you know. And this weekend we drove all the way out to Golden Springs, I think, and we went to a traditional Native American sweat lodge. I forget the tribe, but whatever the tribe is, that's my ignorance speaking, in Colorado, the native tribe. And there's like 25 of us, and they put hot coals in the middle of this tiny little tent. You don't stand, you crawl on your hands and knees, and you sit Indian style in the dirt for 3 hours. And the part that I didn't expect is it's totally pitch black, like sensory deprivation tank type pitch black. And they bang on these drums and they sing for 4 rounds, you know, and like in between rounds, they open the door for a little bit so nobody dies. And then you go back in. And afterwards, you come out of this like hellscape, this black, like sweat death pit, and everyone just has this look of like illumination and everyone's hugging each other. And it's like, man, they know what they're doing. They have it figured out. We're just kind of dummies trying to compensate for what we lack so much by pretending like digital relationships are the thing. So, you know, this is like a little bit unrelated to what we're talking about, but actually it's not. It's actually super, super related, because life and business, happiness and like wealth and abundance, it all comes through the agency of others. And if you don't have that, then you're super fucked. Like there's nothing good that can come out of it. You need other people. And for me, that's how I get it. I think that's how I've stayed pretty grounded.
That's awesome. Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's so important. In the modern world that we live, the stresses and pressures of everything, we have to give us as much time and attention to our physical well-being as well, and keeping those personal connections, as well as focus. We have to focus on so many things, but yeah, we have to, if we're doing well in one, we do well in all. That's where we have to bring it all together. As we approach the end of this then, Tim, it's been absolutely awesome speaking with you. What are you you currently working on? You just mentioned the upcoming release of your new podcast. I think you've had 2 previous podcasts, I think, before. So this will be your third outing. I think I saw you post on X. I think you've already got some like interesting guests lined up. Tell me what the new show is going to be about, and anything else that you're launching or acquiring in the near future.
Me too. I'm in like a new thing in my life. Something about having kids even flips your script more than it's just a real life-changing experience, right? And especially when they start getting a little older, and so my son's 3.5, he starts saying stuff like, no, I don't want you to go, that kind of thing. And it gets you totally. And so through a lot of conversations, mostly with my business coach, I've come to grips with the fact that like deep in my heart, I've always wanted to be in front of others personally. I've spent a lot of my career. I mean, I got my podcast and I do stuff like this. People know who I am, but I don't go out there totally and like step on stage, so to speak, literally and metaphorically. And that's the next chapter for me. I'm all in on this, on the investing part. I'm in that phase, where once you have enough money, the trick really is not to lose it. And I'm on like the not lose it part of my life. And I think it's a lot easier to just methodically and carefully invest in, like I said, yield producing investments. And so that's kind of where I am for my money. But what that looks like for me personally is really my newsletter and like creating a media company around myself. The newsletter, the podcast, it's all going to get published through my Substack. I created some like memberships and some courses that I actually do all through my Substack as well. I'm keeping it as simple and as streamlined and as elegant as possible. And then through that, I'll continue to do what I do, like get clients for my consulting business. That's different thing. It's called the shop.ai. That's really where I work one-on-one with people. It's not a website as much as it's just like a landing page so that people can see like I'm an actual person. If I send an email, and they look me up and they see the shop.ai email address, but it's all going through timstodds.com. It's all happening through my newsletter. And I think the podcast will be fun. It is the 3rd podcast I've done. I started and stopped for a few different reasons, all of which like made sense at the time in terms of what I want to focus on. But I got a crew of real talented people around me that are all working really, really hard for themselves, but also on my behalf. And so I'm just trying not to fuck it up. I'm just trying like to stay out of the way and let smart people be smart. And like in the meantime, I'll continue to build my own thing so that new opportunities come my way. And I really haven't thought of it more than that, man. I'm usually like, really, this is what I'm doing. This is why I'm doing it. This is exactly what I'm going for. And I don't know what's going on in my life. I'm just at a spot right now where I'm just doing this because it feels right. And I'm excited.
Yeah, that's good. And what a journey. And I'm sure there's so many more exciting things to come. I was going to ask you if you had like a 20 sort of year exit plan, if you had like retirement on the beach somewhere sort of you were working towards, or you don't seem like that sort of person. I think you're just vibing the moment. It feels right and you'll just sort of find your path as and when things don't feel right, that's when you'll pivot. Is that fair, would you say?
It is fair. I don't have a whole lot of expectations, but there is one really weird one, and people are always so fascinated. I shouldn't say always. On one of my podcasts, I did an episode about this, and I remember the comments that I got about it. There's 2, really. I want to have a place in Edinburgh because that's where I come from, and it's just the best city in the world. If anyone's ever been to Edinburgh, it rocks. It's the best. That's always just been like a dream. But like the real selfish kind of glamour dream. When I was a kid, I remember watching movies of people walking in Central Park. And for whatever reason, it just seemed like this fantasy land where like only the fanciest people with their trench coats and like their leather gloves, and they would sit on that bench at like that one famous street at Central Park or famous walkway, I should say. And it just always seemed like this out of reach thing that wasn't meant for people like me. And so if there is like a stupid dream that I want for no other reason just to get it, it's like a penthouse right on Central Park, like right off of Park Avenue somewhere. That'd be the thing. And the thing about it is I know once I get it and I sit in the room and I look out the window, it'll just be kind of like, okay, this is great. I did it. And like, it'll be a huge letdown, right? Like all of those things are, but I'm still going for it. That's still going to be like my move.
Interesting. Okay. Well, I'd be interested to know if you would let me come and stay in your Edinburgh place, because I want to go the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. It's a big comedy festival every year in Edinburgh. I'm guilty to say I've never been to Edinburgh, and it's like, well, it's on my doorstep, as it were. I mean, I'm only in England, so it's a stone's throw compared to how far you guys have to drive in the States to get from one side to the other. But yeah, I assume if you're buying a penthouse in Central Park, you'll be buying a castle in Edinburgh. So I want to come and stay in your castle.
Yeah, I'll buy Aberdeen Castle.
Okay. Tim, it's been absolutely awesome to have you on. If people want to connect with you, where's the best place for them to hunt you down?
My brother, thank you so much for your time. timstods.com, timstodz.com. Basically everything about me you can find there.
Okay, that's awesome. And when's the first episode of the podcast going to be out?
January. I think January. What's the third Wednesday in January? Let me check this out. It's so January 15th, I think the first episode will get published. And then I'm going to record on the 8th and try to stay a week ahead so that I never get too jammed up. But yeah, that's my plan.
Okay, awesome. That's another podcast I'm going to have to add to my ever-growing feed of podcasts that I have to find time to listen to every week. Okay, Tim, it's been awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Chris, you too, brother. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
3, 2, 1, yeah!
And that wraps up this episode of Market Movers, Building Brands and Links with Linkify. Big thanks to our parent company, Linkify, the wizards behind turning ambitious businesses into standout brands. Hit up our website at linkify.io and take the first steps towards brand greatness. Big shout out to Fame for making this podcast possible. Thanks for listening, folks. Stick around for more insights in our next episode. Catch you later.